Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into a brand new edition of the Smoke Break College Football Podcast here on the Smoke Break YouTube channel. Please hit like and subscribe if you wouldn't mind. If you enjoy what we do a couple of times a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, me just here kind of one-on-one flossing about, whatever's going on in college football right now. Very much the in-season stuff and games, but also a lot of peripheral stuff like the coaching carousel, working fast and furiously now at this point as well. But again, here a couple times a week. Producer Garrett Ross along with me as well. So thank you for joining me whenever you do. And let's hop right into it because we only have so much time each and every Tuesday and Thursday here. And normally Tuesdays, if you've been with us, we look back on the games that were, the picks we had, and how those went. And on Thursdays, it's time to look forward, and what a fun weekend we are in store for once again. I mean, there's been weekends where there's a numerous top 25 type of games, and those have certainly paid off and been great to follow. And then there's been some weekends where you go, oh, the schedule's a little bit lighter. And I don't know, it feels like sometimes those weekends are the craziest, most chaotic ones. And so this one kind of fitting there, only three what you would call banger games ranked on ranked teams playing each other. And only three of those this weekend. So does that mean we're in for complete pandemonium all over the place? Maybe it does if it kind of holds to the pattern that we've seen thus far. But to just kind of update on where we are a couple days ago, we're talking about Billy Napier being fired and being the 11th coaching job now opened up over the last year, including the offseason, a couple jobs that were already decided heading into this season, but 9 jobs so far during the season, with Billy Napier being the latest one. And we know there will be a 12th and there will be a 13th. And the question is just how many jobs do open up when all is said and done, but been relatively quiet since the Napier news coming out of this past weekend. A lot of speculation now, of course, on who will take that job and who's involved in that job and what will happen to Napier next, along with some of the other jobs that have been opened already, like in Oklahoma State or Virginia Tech, so on and so forth. But what's become very interesting is that we know that at any moment, more jobs could open up. And we've now also seen this past week a couple of places, or one place in particular in Florida State, say, hey, guys, we know what you're saying and everything, but we can't do it right now. We're supporting our guy. We're going to give Mike Norvell everything that we can to support him. And we got his back for the time being, but we hear you and we understand and we know. Basically, we just don't have the money is what Florida State is dealing with right now. But Mike Norvell, a part of a line of coaches that seem to be forming to possibly not be fired here this season due to money issues or whatever else, but already forming the line for next season. I mean, you look at Norvell at Florida State, Brian Kelly at LSU. That's a testy situation. Nothing imminent there by any means, but it's one that you look at and you go, okay, I wouldn't be totally shocked if that opened up here in the next year or two. I think to a lesser extent, Brent Venables at Oklahoma, but here's a guy who basically took a pay cut to further put it elsewhere to better utilization because, well, it was part we need more money here in these other areas, but part punishment because you haven't lived quite up to our expectations thus far. So Brent Venables at Oklahoma, I think a guy, depending on kind of how the rest of their season goes, that you're certainly having somewhere like either in the hole or even on the on-deck circle to possibly join a Norvell, a Brian Kelly. Of course, a Luke Fickell is somebody who you feel like probably won't make it to next year to join those guys that I mentioned. But, I mean, we already have 11 jobs open. There's going to be more than that. It's just a question, again, of where that stops. And then you can already start making a line for next year of the jobs we'll be talking about from the very jump if they don't open by that time as well. And that list, an FSU, an LSU, maybe in Oklahoma, it's a crazy world right now. And I feel bad for the coaches to some extent. It's part of a world that they helped create, not as much as the schools and administrations did. But it is a world that they still can lose their jobs and get $90 million buyouts or tens of millions of dollars of buyouts. So there's at least that going for them. So that does take some of the sting out of feeling bad for some of these guys. But, yeah, the coaching carousel by its own news cycle could be its very own podcast. And it is a subject that I do find very interesting. So nothing new to report there, except for the fact that this isn't over. And you can look into the foreseeable future and see major jobs that we're probably going to be talking about. Hiring new coaches or on the verge of needing to do just that. Meanwhile, couple of injury notes in the Big 12. Will Hammond starting again for Texas Tech this weekend. The Red Raiders looking unbeatable until they weren't. And last weekend, Arizona State giving them their first loss to really shake up the Big 12 race and also help fuel BYU to being in sole possession of first place. Sole possession of the only undefeated mark in the Big 12, having possession of first place alongside Cincinnati as two conference unbeatens. I should put it that way. But Cincy and BYU leading the conference. Texas Tech takes that loss. They're going to be fine, I believe, especially this weekend playing Oklahoma State, where at last check they were 38.5-point favorites. But news has come down that Will Hammond will once again be starting at quarterback for the Red Raiders. I don't think that makes a dang bit of difference against Oklahoma State. But I do think this is a game where he'll have an opportunity to really put on a nice performance. They can get back to just kind of blowing out teams and get some of their mojo back after the sting of losing that first game. But it is interesting that Baron Morton is going to miss a second consecutive game. Just a couple weeks ago, I was calling him the most injured but not hurt guy, and now here he is getting ready to miss a second whole game. Now, if he's somewhat dinged up and you really don't feel like there's any need to rush him back for a big game, then I think this is the right call. Let him heal up. You don't need him to beat Oklahoma State. So let Will Hammond get some more reps and let Barron get all the way healthy for this stretch run. But that is of interest. Also, Arizona State this weekend going to be without Jordan Tyson. The big upset last week coming out of that game against Texas Tech, where clearly he was not feeling 100% healthy by the end of that thing. Looked almost like he was running in slow motion a little bit there with the last couple of those catches, but he was still grinding out yards and making big plays and a huge part of that upset bid for the Sun Devils. But they've got a real challenge this weekend against Houston as Willie Fritz and the Cougs roll into town. You know, they'll have a great game plan and a stingy defense. So Sam Levitt looked really good last weekend. He'll need to be really good again, but without his number one, without a doubt, not even a conversation or question about it, their number one weapon in and Jordan Tyson, being without him, very notable, especially if you are a Houston fan looking at the potential for an upset bid. That does not do anything but increase your chances. So a couple of interesting injury updates there out of the Big 12. Will Hammond starting again and Jordan Tyson not playing against Houston. But let's dive into the games that we've already picked over on 365 Sports, probably by the time that you've seen this. But if not, you're catching this like on a Thursday afternoon. Well, here in a couple hours, we're going to be picking the games that I'm mentioning right now. And last week, some upsets, some craziness led to like a 3-2 record I think I had. So not a great mark, but I'll take anything that's above 500 that'll keep your head above water. And a couple of the games that we're going to start off with here are games that I was just referring to with these injury updates. Houston at Arizona State, BYU and Iowa State. We will get to those, but I want to go in order of kind of how the day will go. And that will mean that we're starting off with number 8 Ole Miss and number 13 Oklahoma, an 11 a.m. kickoff from Norman. And this is a game where I feel like a lot of the people I'm hearing from and talking to and reading about are picking Ole Miss. I look at the spread, and last I looked, Oklahoma's been favored basically, if not the entire week. And as an Oklahoma pessimist, but an Oklahoma fan, you know, I'm a guy who picked them to lose against Texas and proved to be right there. And I'm probably more negative on them as a more up-close personal fan than somebody looking on from the outside, except for maybe Texas fans or Oklahoma State fans or somebody who would be ultra negative. But for a fan of the team, I'm normally on the more pessimistic side for whatever reason that may be. But man, after initially just kind of going, yeah, Ole Miss will probably win this game. They're playing really well, even though they just lost. But Trinidad Chambliss, what a great story, and really good running back and so on and so forth. And then I sat there and just kept having this hankering of, man, this game's in Norman. They just had a nice win at South Carolina last week. Like, I get Ole Miss is a really good team. I get that they're ranked higher, but this is Oklahoma football after all. And last I checked, like, there's no need to be too nervous or unsure about the ability to beat Ole Miss. I don't care what their ranking is. I don't care how good they may be. I think Oklahoma's still a good football team. I think they're plenty capable of beating Ole Miss. I think they're plenty capable of losing to Ole Miss. This one of the SEC games, like what the Big 12 and really college football as a whole has turned into, this parity Home field matters, but all of these games you can pretty much look at and go, yeah, I think both sides have a chance here. And this is one of those. So I think a coin flip type of a game. Initially, I thought Ole Miss, but I'm going to put some faith in my Sooners here. I'm going to go with Oklahoma at home. I don't think that we're going to go sans upsets this weekend. So this is a game that is not and would not be a huge upset by any means, but would be an upset 13/8. So give me the number 13 Sooners at home against Lane Kiffin and the Rebels. And if they can hand Ole Miss a second loss, well, that's certainly notable. And for Oklahoma, it would be a marquee win. If not, then suddenly they eat their second loss, and they're now sinking a little bit in that SEC and certainly that playoff conversation as well. So 11 a.m. on ABC for that one. The other big SEC game of the three that we'll get to now, 2:30 ESPN. It is Mizzou at Vandy, number 15 Tigers at the number 10 Commodores, and Vanderbilt coming off of the big win last weekend. I had said at the time that I felt like in picking Vanderbilt last weekend and just giving them a little bit of love when talking about, their story and kind of the romance of the Diego Pavia storyline and just all of that. I thought last weekend that they were just sort of due for that kind of Hollywood upset, that another chapter for the Diego Pavia underdog story and for the Vanderbilt underdog story. And so they were able to get that last weekend against LSU. So a top 10 win there for Vanderbilt last weekend, but now an opportunity to add on to that here against a very good Missouri team that went on the road and beat Auburn in double overtime last week. And just another stab into the Hugh Freeze resume there by the Tigers over Hugh Freeze's Tigers. But yeah, what a year it's been for Auburn, huh? But anyways, Missouri goes out on the road and gets a big win over Auburn. So that sets up this 15 versus 10 matchup. I'm taking Vandy. I gave them their little Hollywood moment last weekend, but I think they're going to add on to that at home. Not an impossible challenge here for Missouri, obviously, but yeah, give me Vandy 2:30 on ESPN to keep it going. And boy, if they win again, then that sure is a story as well. Now it's set up a pretty big showdown there with Texas coming up in Austin here in a couple of weeks. So what a run it's been and what a run it can continue to be as Vanderbilt playing now their third straight top 25 opponent as a part of a 4 straight games against top 25 opponents stretch. That is if Texas doesn't manage to find a way to fall out of the rankings this weekend. But I don't think that will be the case, as I do think they'll go to Starkville and win, but you never know, man. You never know. Just ask Arizona State. Meanwhile, A&M at LSU, another big one out of the SEC this weekend. The third top 25 banger ranked on ranked. A&M and LSU have formed quite the little rivalry here over the last few years since A&M made its way to the SEC, including the crazy multiple overtime game that I'll never, ever quite forget about. But this one, 6:30 night game there in Baton Rouge. And normally that would be quite the ominous kind of place on the schedule. But I like this A&M team a lot. They're actually favored going into this game. They've got weapons galore on offense and a really stingy defense. I think Marcel Reed's been better than Garrett Nussmeier this year. I think A&M's got a better running game. I think there's not too many times you can say a team's on par has as good of, if not maybe better receivers than LSU. And I think A&M's actually a team where you can make that case. I think they're better coached. I think the only thing really in favor of LSU here is the fact that it's a Saturday night game in Death Valley. And if not for that, then I think A&M is the easy choice here. Aggies looking to go to 8-0 and 5-0 in the SEC. And LSU trying to keep their head above water. A loss here means you'd be 2-3 in the SEC. You'd be 5-3 overall. Just not acceptable. So a massive game, and give me A&M on the road. I'm a believer in Mike Elko and the Aggies. They're very talented. And so I'm going to take them to go ahead and win this game this weekend in Baton Rouge. And then watch as the heat gets turned up. Certainly you would think on Brian Kelly. And then a couple of games to round out of the Big 12 this weekend. As again, it's not a very busy weekend in terms of a bunch of ranked on ranked games, but you do have an important one out of the state of Kansas, the Sunflower Showdown. Kansas State and Kansas doing battle this weekend, and a couple of teams where You look at their ability to go from kind of the middle of the Big 12 pack towards the top, not necessarily right square into the conference race, but an opportunity to be in the mix here down the stretch, as both of these teams have 2 losses. But in the Big 12, you're still alive. 3 losses and you're probably toast and not going to be involved over the last month. But 2 losses, I think you're still very much in the mix. So Kansas at home, slight favorites over K-State, 2.5 last I saw here. I think Kansas is a nice football team. I think K-State's been a lot better as of late. I'm tempted to go with like the hot hand in K-State, but it's not really a hot hand. I mean, they just won the last game that we saw them play against TCU, and it was impressive because it was by a lot more than I think we anticipated. But right before that, they had lost to Baylor. Now they've lost a bunch of close games, so I think Kansas State is a bit better than their record states. But give me Lance Leipold and the Jayhawks at home. Had the weird back and forth deal with Texas Tech. That was just all sort of strange, and really, fortunately for Kansas, it led to more emphasis being placed on Tech and then kind of leading into their loss almost as a distraction. So maybe you can kind of give a hat tip to Lance Leipold and the Jayhawks for helping distract the Red Raiders last week. But regardless, kind of just a weird situation. Both these teams had bye weeks last week to, in the Jayhawks case, really regroup, and in K-State's case, a chance to try and build off of that win against the Frogs. This ought to be heated. Daniels has been a great player for the Jayhawks, and I think this is going to be one of his marquee wins here in the last stretch run of his career. But Avery Johnson playing pretty good the last time we saw him. This ought to be a good one, but I'm going to go with the Jayhawks at home. And then finally, BYU, the big win last week against arch rival Utah in a very competitive and challenging holy war, as it always is. BYU 7-0 overall. Not by themselves in first place in the Big 12 because Cincinnati also unbeaten in the league, but BYU the only unbeaten overall team this year and tied there for first in the league with the Bearcats. But you got Arizona State, Texas Tech, and Houston all with 1 loss. And so this is a big game coming up here for BYU, where they're actually, last I looked, slight underdogs to the Iowa State Cyclones in Ames this weekend. Iowa State at one point, the highest-ranked Big 12 team, started off better than anybody, started off before anybody with that game in Ireland and the win over Kansas State. But has struggled a little bit here in the last couple of weeks, taking a couple of losses on the chin. You got Matt Campbell being rumored potentially for all of these jobs that are opening up. That could prove to be a little bit too much to deal with, but I think this is going to be a highly competitive and fun game, and there's a reason why Iowa State still, as we sit here, still slight favorites. Maybe an emotional letdown by BYU, maybe just the fact that they're good, but nobody's unbeatable. Whatever the case may be, I do think this will be a great challenge for the Cougars, but I'm going to take BYU on the road to go into Ames and win. I was just so impressed last weekend, and really every time I've watched them, save for maybe the Colorado game, and even then they won and they walked away having dealt with adversity. And I just feel like they're as well coached as anybody in the country and certainly in the league. But Iowa State's pretty well coached as well. So I'm very much looking forward to this one. Cyclones, slight favorites according to Vegas, but give me the Cougars to keep it rolling and to move to 8-0 and to keep a chokehold on the Big 12 lead. I expect Cincinnati will win as well. So I think they'll both still be sitting exactly where they were. And I think Arizona State will win. I think Texas Tech will win. And I think I'm going to take I'm going to stick with Arizona State. I think Houston's going to take their second loss, so they'll drop a spot. But I think everything else will kind of remain as is. Now, if BYU wins, then Iowa State, they're basically in a hole with 3 losses. But that's another conversation for another day. If we're talking about an Iowa State upset, then we're really talking about some chaos. But BYU and Iowa State, that's a 2:30 Fox game coming up on Saturday. Sunflower Showdown, in case I didn't mention, 11 a.m. on TNT. There's 5 games we'll be paying a lot of attention to and 5 games we picked on the show. So, again, give me Oklahoma at home over Ole Miss, Vandy at home over Mizzou, A&M on the road against LSU, KU at home against K-State in the Sunflower Showdown, and BYU on the road against Iowa State. We'll see how I do next week, and I will not be afraid to tell you if I went 0-5 or 1-4, whatever, but hasn't been the case this year. I'm hoping that won't be the case this week. But we will see, and we will be talking about this the next time I join you on Tuesday for the next edition of the Smoke Break College Football Podcast. Before you leave, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you enjoy what we do, and if you support, then maybe we can expand this thing and join you a little more often. But until next time, thanks to Garrett Ross behind the scenes, I'm Craig Smoak, and this has been the Smoke